basically, my real big question, which is similar to a lot of the questions that a lot of people have asked here, is what is the highest impact ML work that can be done now today with data available today or easily available that could accelerate BCI or whole brain emulation? Now, I acknowledge, basically to cause AI alignment, I acknowledge that it may not be probable that these things could happen fast enough depending on your timelines, but I think it's fairly inspiring to consider that even if something is not necessarily super high probability to work, taking the neglected problems approach in effective altruism it sometimes works. The low probability scenario that the thing is going to succeed, but you try to do it anyway, and it's very high impact if it does succeed. And I think that's an interesting framework with which to approach work that you can do in AI alignment as well, like just to brainstorm what are the things that could be done with this neglected approach. And that's where things like BCI, accelerating BCI to accelerate human capacities come about. But then also, it's interesting to consider like what other crazy ideas, which probably won't work, might be worth pursuing. Because if they did work, that would be very, very high impact. And that's sort of like, I have a decent amount of experience running startups and building startups for like many tens of clients over a decade now. And that's the sort of thinking that leads startups to be the most successful, interestingly. And it's something that I sort of see lacking in like the thinking of like many academics and researchers and people in AI alignment and the EA community and whatnot. There's sort of like this like the sequence thinking MIRI approach, which is fairly different. And there's I'm not an expert on any of the things that you guys are experts on, but I do know this formula does work for innovative things that people don't believe are possible. So it's something that I would put forward is worth considering. And I've been basically like I started my company thinking that in the first place, like that there is I used to think there was a low probability that within our lifetimes humanity's primary mode of interaction with computers would come to be via BCI. And when I started the company, I thought there was a very low probability of that within our lifetimes, but it was still worth working on it anyway, and then set out to do what we wound up doing, and we grew to over 150 people and sold our first startup to basically create more and more capital to try to invest in building agency increasing BCI to cause AI alignment eventually. We've developed a formula that works to do that, but along the time scale that I think we're looking at towards AI timelines decreasing potentially, it's not, we don't have time to create the billions that we would want to invest in all the things that would be worthwhile to do to accelerate BCI hardware. And I think that's another big question which I want to pose to people, which is assume that you are not capital constrained whatsoever, because I do think there's a decent probability that the entire field of AI alignment is not capital constrained at all in the near term. Like at some point within the next 6 to 12 months, perhaps the world freaks out sufficiently that they are trying to deploy capital wherever they can to cause AI alignment. And so therefore, like, rather than thinking, okay, how does whole brain emulation spend 30 million in the next year, think like how do you spend 3 billion or 10 billion? And that's not necessarily like, for sure, something that you could do, but it could be fairly impactful if that does come about, both for accelerating BCI, for human alignment, and that's, and I don't know, I can probably go ahead and there, yeah.
Well, it's nice because it's encouraging people to be very ambitious in the project generation prompts. More you have like, what's medium, long-term success look like, what would it cost? So ask for the money that will require.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, reactions? You get thumbs up. Anything else you want to mention that you didn't?
Looks like there's a question.
So you're focused heavily on BCI, which I think is awesome, and there are a lot of answers to many questions about the brain. Now, do you see it as an avenue to whole brain emulation or something that kind of supplements brain?
Well, it certainly is an avenue towards whole brain emulation, but no, I don't view it, that's not my primary thing with it, no, it's supplementary, yeah.
Is there a practical thing that like the people in this room could do right now that would improve their capabilities that's maybe not well known that they've discovered?
That people have discovered so far with BCI.
Yeah, or anything you put together stuff for, I don't know if these are applicable to people, but you're trying to improve people's productivity, right? Like is there something that's like an early form of that could be put into action right now?
Well, not with like BCI specifically that humans can use today, like any random person, but there are, like the thing that has like probably 10x to my productivity is an app that we created for like my own use and the use of other people at my company where, because you don't have to hold things, like whenever I think of a thing to do, I add it to this universal launcher app on our phones and computers. And so I don't have to hold in my working memory the idea I thought of and then switch to go to a place to put that idea down, and like potentially forget the idea by the time I get to it. And then we created a lot of like cool additional tools that just from much closer to the speed of thought you get out ideas. So I like add things to various to-do lists and to like to-do lists for other people and discussion topics for different things, and or Slack people without having to open Slack, and a million other things like that. And it sounds sort of silly, but this is actually something which has 10x my productivity and also the productivity of other people in the company. So I would recommend doing something like that.
Is this thing we can just get if it's useful?
You have to have an @ae.studio email address, so no, you can't right now, but we could make it publicly available probably.
WBE group discount?
Yeah, it's not something that I wanted to like spin out as a startup to make money, like because I like to use it to innovate on thinking itself, like, and I don't want to have it compromised by profit motive. Like the BCI stuff, the reason we exist is to create capital to invest in BCI, so that doesn't have profit motive. But yes, it would increase people's productivity. So probably, I guess we should just, I don't know, we could open source it or something. You could use it yourself if you want.
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. No, sorry. What's your question?
What's up?
What's your challenge?
Oh, it is, what is the highest impact ML work that can be done today with data available today or easily available to accelerate BCI and WBE?